Quick step-by-step on how to change your cam timing chain on a YZ450f. This is a 2010 model here. First you want to take a 17mm guy. I use my impact and take this off. Your flywheel, if you look to the side, has got a step in it. You can put a wrench on there or an adjustable wrench and hold it so that it doesn't spin while you're taking this nut off. Then you're left with your flywheel on the end of the crankshaft snout, and that won't come off. It's keyed. You see there with the little Woodruff key or square key. You need one of these. This is a Tusk brand, but you can get whatever brand. Flywheel puller. It basically threads onto the end of the threaded end of your flywheel, and then you tighten this screw up and it presses the flywheel off. I've disassembled this so it'll go faster on video. Then you, when you open it up, you've got your timing chain wrapped around this sprocket, and then you've got this retainer here that holds your timing chain guide on. You pull these two bolts out, they're 8mm each, and this comes off, and you'll need to remove this guide or retainer, I guess, so that you can get to it. And then you can simply slide your timing chain guide out of the way and pull your timing chain off. And then to reassemble, basically the same as disassembly, you just feed your new timing chain up through the cylinder up out the top end and go from there. You don't actually need to take your head off. I just pulled my head off to do a leak down test on it to make sure, since I put new valves in it about 20 hours ago. I wanted to make sure that the new valves were seated correctly in the head, and they are. When you're reassembling your bottom end here, it's a good idea to put some blue Loctite on these bolts that hold your timing chain retainer on. When you're reassembling your timing chain or flywheel cover side, the stator side right here, you want to make sure to use the bolt that has the copper washer right here. There's a little indicator, if you can look closely. Right there, that bolt goes through to an oil galley or an oil passage, and you want to make sure you have that one with the copper on, or else it'll continuously weep oil. Alright, when you are reinstalling the cams, you got to make sure you put your cam clips in. I usually stuff a rag down here in this area so I don't lose them, but I've done it enough that I kind of don't worry about it. So you get your cam clips in there, then you set your cam cap on. And you want to make sure and just ease it on, because you want your cam to be able to move freely with the cam cap on. I just set my cam cap bolts in, and before I do anything else, I verify my timing. And if you look in here, you will see a mark right here that lines up with that mark. In order to get that mark on the flywheel to line up with the mark for top dead center, you need to rotate this bolt, 17mm. So you rotate that until you're top dead center, and then come up to your cams, and if you view on your cam, you've got two dots. And you should have your dot lined up with the head, and if you look closely, you can see a dot on the intake cam. It's a little hard to see because I'm blocking the light here with my phone, but right here on the cam you can see a dot. And there's a second one right here. You want to verify those are in those positions. This one's even with the head. When the cam chain is tight that way. So see that dot's even there. Now when you have tension on your cam chain, your tensioner pushes right here. So notice when I push here how that gets tight. If you look over on this side, you'll also see a second dot. And again, it's obscured by my phone, but you can just barely make it out. It's right here, even with the head. Now that lets you know that your cams are set with the motor at top dead center, like we showed you before, with that line right here lining up with the line. So when you tighten your cam cap bolts, it's important you do them in crisscross pattern so that you don't over tighten them and cause your cam bearings to burn up. It's also important that the cams rotate freely even after they're torqued. Now I like to use an inch-pound torque wrench. The spec is 7.2 foot-pounds. My big torque wrench only goes down to 10 foot-pounds, so I got an inch-pound torque wrench. 7.2 foot-pounds translates to 86 inch-pounds. So torque them in a crisscross pattern, and then we can check to see if they rotate freely. Okay, now that I've torqued those, we can check and see if our cams still rotate freely, which they do. And that one's a little sticky, so you can sometimes give it a tap side to side to make sure it's seated correctly. Alright, and now it is. We can rotate it by hand. Now's a good time too to check your valve clearances. Use a feeler gauge, and your intakes are 0.15 to 0.20, and your exhausts are 0.20 to 0.25 millimeters. So that's 15 thousandths, 20 thousandths on the intakes, and 20 to 25 thousandths on the exhausts. The reason for them being different is your exhaust valves are going to get hotter because exhaust gases are flowing past them. The next step is installing your cam chain tensioner. Whether you choose to go with the OEM auto tensioner or manual tensioner is up to you. I kind of explained the benefits earlier, but important note, when you're installing them, you have one normal bolt and one with a copper washer. Your copper washer one needs to be on the inside. That again goes into an oil port or an oil galley, and you need to have that copper washer on there to make sure that it's not going to leak on you. These are torqued down to 7.2 foot-pounds as well. When you're setting your cam chain tension, your auto tensioner, if you have a good new one, when you change these cam chains, or if you have a manual one, you want to have between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch of slack in your chain. So I just set a ruler in here, and we are right on the inch line right now. We can go up about 1/8 and down about 1/8, and that is our 1/4 inch of travel. Now it's quite important to get this right, because if you have too much tension on there, it's going to wear your timing chain too fast, and if you have too little, you could skip a tooth and potentially blow up your motor if your valves high-five the piston. Okay, now that you've got your timing set and your cam chain tension set, you want to take and snug your set bolt or your set nut on your manual tensioner. You just snug it against that guy. Then you put your plugs back in. I've already set my valve clearance because this is a brand new top end with stainless valves and springs and all that, new piston. But you want to make sure you've lubed up your cams before you turn over the motor, especially if it's been a while since you put it together. I already lubed these up before I put them in, didn't show it on camera, but it's important you do that so that it doesn't wear the cams before the oil pump starts pumping oil back up into the top end. And you should be good to start it. So long as you've got your timing set, you just fill up the tank, hook up your electrical and fuel connections, and then bolt your motor mounts back up, that valve cover back on, set your tray down between the top of the motor and the gas tank, and it should fire up. You'll have to kick it quite a few times to prime the pump and pressurize the lines between the pump and the fuel injector, but once you've done that, it should start up pretty good.